Hey, what's happening, guys? I just did a video talking about Israel's birthday and the tie-in here with the blood moon. I left out this part, but it's probably good because it's probably better to spend more time of it in a second video anyway. But I want to talk briefly about the midnight, the whole midnight connection here, because I think it's very significant. And so I want to dive into that real quick here with you. So as we know, this blood moon is going to happen at midnight, okay? Now, it could happen any time of the day, but it's happening at midnight. Why is that significant? Well, what's interesting is it's happening from the crossover from the 15th to the 16th, okay? So it's at midnight on the 15th and the 16th, right? And that's very similar to what took place in, if we go to the actual, let me get back over here where I can show that to you. But when we go to the date of the calendar and we see that it was midnight. Hold on, let me get this open for you here. Trying to do too many things at once. Look at this. Okay, so just touching. If you didn't see the last video, go back and check out that video too. But basically, it wasn't until midnight until Israel really had their independence. Okay, so they declared it, but they didn't have independence until midnight, right? So that's significant because that's exactly what's happening with this blood moon. It started on the 14th, but didn't really get completed until the 15th. Well, that's the same thing that's happening with the blood moon. It starts on the 15th and is not completed the 16th. As we talked about in the last video, the month of the calendar this month is 1 day off, so it kind of lines up again. And go check that video for more on that. But I wanted to briefly look at the biblical side of this because I didn't get to do that in the last video, and it's important because we got to know where does this stand with the Bible. Okay, so check this out, and thank you again to new subscribers. Be sure to hit the notification button and the like button and subscribe so that you get updates. Because who knows, I'm doing videos rapid fire lately, so be sure to hit the notification button on that. Okay, so check this out. Moses said, "Thus saith the Lord, about midnight will I go into the midst of Egypt." Okay, so now he's talking about the Spirit of God coming into Egypt, right? And he says, "And all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sitteth upon this throne, to the firstborn of the maidservant that is behind the mill, and all the firstborn of beasts," right? So that is God's strategy. This is a biblical precedent for God to come at midnight, right? For this moon to happen at midnight, for Israel to become a nation at midnight. It's the way God works, right? And so he comes at midnight to take the firstborn. Well, that's exactly what he's going to do at the Arpazo. He's going to come and take the firstborn, right? We are the firstborn of his fruits, the first fruits of his church, right? That's the firstborn from the dead. Jesus is the firstborn, obviously, but we are the first fruits of Jesus's ministry. Jesus was born first, but then all the disciples that he made are God's children, and those are his first fruits that he's presenting to God. That's his offering to the Father, right? We are the offering to the Father that he's presenting to the Father, just like the priests present. He's a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek, as it says in the Bible, and the priest presents his offering to the Father, to God on high. And so that is what Jesus is doing with his disciples. He presents us as an offering in the same way. So the same way that in midnight, the Spirit of God came and creeping death, as it's called in the Metallica song, if you ever check that out, it's kind of interesting. But they comes in at midnight, and he takes all the firstborn of Egypt, right? Now, he doesn't take the firstborn of Israel. They're in Goshen. They're protected. But God protects his own. But in this case, God's taking his first fruits, right? He's taking the first fruits. And so there's reason to believe that midnight could be the time. And the fact that you've got this blood moon happening at midnight, and the fact that Israel became a nation at midnight is very significant. Okay, let me show you a couple more of these midnight passages. It came to pass at midnight he smote all the firstborn of the land of Egypt. Okay, we just read that. Samson lay till midnight and arose at midnight, took the doors of the gate of the city and the two posts and went away, etc. It came to pass at midnight the man was afraid, turned himself, and behold, a woman laid at his feet. That's when Ruth appears to Boaz. She arose at midnight, took my son beside me. Okay, that's kind of a that's sort of a sad story there at midnight, but it's just symbolic too, because he's taking one child and replacing it for the other. So actually, that's actually a very significant story, because that's exactly what's happening there. You never really think about that. That's where she goes before Solomon, and Solomon decides, well, then cut the baby in half, and he's like, no, don't do that, So, and he was so wise, considered so wise because of that. But if you think of the actual story, what's happening is one woman took one's baby, right, because her baby had died, and she replaced it. Well, that's kind of what God's doing. He's replacing. There's sort of a replacement happening here. There's one. He wanted Israel, and he's taking, he wanted Rachel, and he's getting Leah. He wanted Israel, and now he's getting the Gentiles. So there is kind of a parallel there, and the dead being raised to life, so to speak. It's kind of interesting. In the moment they shall die. Here's an interesting one from Job. In a moment they shall die, and the people shall be troubled at midnight and pass away, and the mighty shall be taken away without hand. That's kind of interesting. I kind of would like to see, how is that phrased in the NIV, just for giggles. Let's see what that says there. It says, for all of them, midnight is their morning. They make friends with terrors of darkness. Oh, wow, I'm getting another set of scriptures here when I look in the NIV. Okay, that's interesting. Well, let me explore KJV first. We'll come back to this in a second, because I don't want to miss out. But in a moment they shall die. Let's just look at this passage real quick. It's kind of cool. Sounds cool, right? So let's take a look at it. I'm looking at this first time with you guys. Okay, I just put in the word midnight, and I said, well, let's take a few look at midnight scriptures. So I'm doing this fresh with you. In a moment, okay, how much less to him except the persons regarding. In a moment shall they die, and the people shall be troubled at midnight and pass away, and the mighty will be taken away without hand. Just curious how this sounds in the NIV. It says, they die in an instant. In the middle of the night, the people are shaken and they pass away. The mighty are removed without human hand. Oh, that's interesting. Without human hand. Ooh, so it's like God's hand takes us away in the middle of the night. Isn't that interesting? Now, of course, we think about death here, but there's also the idea of the mighty being taken away, the mighty of God, God's children being taken away without human hand in the middle of the night. His eyes are on the ways of mortal. He sees their every step. That's kind of interesting. All right, let's keep going here. Let's see what else we got in the midnight collection, in the midnight gallery. All right. At midnight I will rise to give thanks unto thee because of thy righteous judgments. Ooh, that's interesting. Okay, and Psalm 119 of all Psalms. Okay, and 26, 62. Okay, so at midnight I rise to give thanks, right? We're rising to heaven to give thanks because of his righteous judgments, because he's about to bring judgment upon the earth. That's kind of interesting. And at midnight there was a cry made, behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him. Now we all know this one, very significant when it comes to harpazo. This is all the maids waiting for the groom to come. The parable of the 10 virgins, right? Then the kingdom will be open, of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. And that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be marrying Christ. The church is the bride and Christ is the bridegroom. And so we are married to him. And so he comes and gets us, just like in Jewish tradition. He comes and surprises his bride in the middle of the night at midnight and comes and gets his bride. So it says, the bridegroom tarried and they all slumbered and slept. So we thought he was going to come earlier, right? And that's what they thought too. We thought Jesus would come sooner. And we're like, oh man. And so everybody kind of starts to go back to their old ways, and maybe he's not coming. They start to get faithless and get discouraged, and I don't know when he's coming. We talked about this last night, about the late figs dropping from the fig tree and how they were supposed to come in the winter, but they don't come till the spring. Very interesting. And here in the same way, and go back and check out that video. That's in the Moonlight Chat video that we did last night. But it was a great discussion we had with everybody, so thanks so much for all your discussion there. But here, so we go from kind of waiting, and then all of a sudden at midnight, there's a cry made, behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him. And, the sun and moon are often described as the bride and bridegroom as well. The sun being the bridegroom and the moon the bride, so to speak. And so you've got the bridegroom coming out at midnight, and you've got that happening with the moon at midnight, right? So we've got this parallel here of the midnight connection, the midnight expression, midnight express, the midnight special. Let the midnight special. Okay. And he said unto them, which of you shall have a friend and shall go unto him at midnight and say to him, friend, lend me 3 loaves. Right, because you don't care about the friend, but you're going to give to him anyway. And again, it's at midnight. Now, here's one I kind of wanted to end off with, as I thought was really great. Now, before I do, it says for the first day of the week, they came together to break bread and preach in their homes. So this was like the first where they're celebrating. They're coming together on the first day of the week to celebrate, the Lord's Day, which is Sunday. So it's the first day, and then Paul would preach to them. And while they were preaching, he continued until midnight. And then, of course, somebody falls out the window, and he brings him back to life. He resurrects him. You know, that's an interesting one, too. I wasn't even think. This is what I'm saying. This is the Spirit, guys, because I wasn't even thinking about that. I'm like, but that's really interesting, too. You guys know that story? Let me just look at that real quick. So he's preaching until midnight, and a young man named Eutychus fell asleep into a deep sleep, kind of like a lot of Christians are right now. A lot of people are in deep sleep right now. And as Paul was long preaching, now he preached till midnight. Remember that. He preached till midnight. He sunk down with sleep. He fell down from the third loft and was taken up dead. Wow. So he died, right? And a lot of people are dying as they're waiting for the Lord. It says, Paul went down, fell on him, and embraced him and said, trouble not yourselves, for his life is in him. And when he therefore was come up again, he had broken bread. So basically, he resurrected him. Let me look at another translation of this real quick. He resurrects him here, 2011. Let's see, 2011 says, then he went upstairs. Paul threw himself on the young man, put his arms around him. Don't be alarmed. He said, he is alive. Then he went upstairs again and broke bread and ate. After talking until daylight, he left. The people took the young man home alive and were greatly comforted. I would think so, right? And God's going to take us home alive. He's going to resurrect us and take us home alive. That's pretty cool. Wasn't expecting that one. Well, that's kind of neat. See, this is what happens when you study the Bible, guys. Be encouraged. Just go out there, type a word in and see where God leads you, man. He's just going to lead you and show you some really cool, encouraging things. Okay, let's go back over here. So when the 14th night, the 14th night. Whoa, I didn't expect that one coming. The 14th night? Are you serious? The 14th night? Oh, wow. Was not expecting that. As we were driven up and down Adrian about midnight, the shipmen deemed that they drew near to some country. Ooh, a man who goes on a long journey to another country on the 14th night. Wow, that's cool. Guys, this is what happens when you study the Bible. Unexpected things. You find unexpected gems and jewels, special treasures. Wow, isn't that cool? Let me just read a little context on this real quick. Put it in a little more modern vernacular there for you. Check that out. Okay, so what was that, 27? It says, on the 14th night, we were still being driven across the Adriatic Sea when about midnight, the sailors sensed they were approaching land. Ooh, that's interesting. About midnight on the 14th night. I love that, man. Wow. They sensed they were approaching land. The promised land, perhaps? They took soundings and found the water was 120 feet deep. A short time later, they took soundings again and found it was 90 feet deep. Fearing that we would dash against the rocks, they dropped 4 anchors in the stern and prayed for daylight in an attempt to escape from the ship. Wow, that's what we're trying to get off, right? We're trying to get off the ship of troubles down here. Man, the sailors let the lifeboat down into the sea. Wow. Pretending they were going to lower some anchors from the bow. Then Paul said to the centurion and the soldiers, unless these men stay with the ship, you cannot be saved. Ooh, that sounds almost like Israel, where they say, don't try to flee to Egypt. You got to go to Babylon. But in this case, it's like, wow, you have to stay with the ship to be saved, right? You got to stay with the Lord to be saved. Don't give up. God's going to carry you through. It's like Noah and the ark. So the soldiers cut the ropes that held the lifeboat and let it drift away. Wow, that's a lot of faith. They let the lifeboat drift away. Well, that's faith. They cut the ropes. They let the ship go. Just before dawn, Paul urged them all to eat. For the last 14 days, he said, you have been in constant suspense and have gone without food. You haven't eaten anything. Boy, isn't that the truth? Now I urge you to take some food. You need to survive. Not one of you will lose a single hair from his head. Isn't that God encouraging us during times of trouble? After he said this, he took some bread and gave thanks in front of them all, and then he broke it and began to eat. They were all encouraged and ate some food themselves. Altogether, there were 276 of us on board. That's an interesting number we should explore. When they had eaten as much as they wanted, they lightened the ship by throwing the grain into the sea. Wow, they even threw their food away. I mean, talk about faith. When daylight came, they did not recognize land, but they saw a bay with a sandy beach where they decided to run the ship aground if they could. Cutting loose the anchors. Wow. God's going to cut loose our anchors. They left them in the sea and at the same time untied the ropes that held the rudders. Then they hoisted the foresail to the wind and made for the beach. Wow, that's amazing. untied the ropes. But the ship struck a sandbar and ran aground. The bow struck fast and would not move, and the stern was broken to pieces by the pounding surf. It's like, boom, you're done with that life. That's destroyed. The soldiers planned to kill the prisoners to prevent any of them from swimming away and escaping, but the centurion wanted to spare Paul's life, kept them from carrying out their plan. Here are those who swim to jump overboard first to get to the land. The rest were there to get on planks or other pieces of the ship. In this way, everyone reached land safely on the flaming chariots of God. The angels taking them away on a piece of ship or whatever can get them to the promised land safely. Wow, that is really, really interesting. 276, remember that number. I'm going to check it out at the very end here, and we'll see if it means anything significant. And let me just look at this last one, because this is the one I kind of, when I was just briefly overview, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a great one. So here at midnight, we've got Paul and Silas, right? They're in prison, right? And it says, Paul and Silas were imprisoned. Let me put this in a more modern tongue, make it a little easier to skim through here. Let's see. About midnight. Okay. So after they had been severely flogged, they were thrown into prison, and the jailer was commanded to guard them carefully. When he received these orders, he put them in the inner cell and fastened their feet in the stocks. About midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the other prisoners were listening to them. Suddenly, check this out, guys. Suddenly there was such a violent earthquake. Okay, where do we know this from? We know it from when Jesus died on the cross. There was a violent earthquake, many rose from the grave. We know it from when he was resurrected and the angel rolled the stone away. We talked about in this last videos. There was a violent earthquake when he was resurrected. We know about it as well from from Revelation 6, of course, there's an earthquake that takes place. We know about it in Ezekiel 38 and 39. There's an earthquake. So this earthquake, though, there's always an earthquake associated with these resurrections, right? Especially the significant ones and the ones where there's lots of people involved. But Jesus had a violent earthquake, and most people don't realize that, but that's what happened. There was a violent earthquake, and the angel rolled the stone away. So here they are at midnight praying, singing hymns to God, prisoners, just as we are on this earth. And suddenly there was such a violent earthquake that the foundations of the prison were shaken. At once all the prison doors flew open, and everyone's chains came loose. Wow, isn't that what we're waiting for? The door to fly open, and all of our chains to come loose, and that we finally get to go away and be with God. The jailer woke up, and when he saw the prison doors open, drew his sword, was about to kill himself because he thought the prisoners escaped. Paul shouted, "Don't harm yourself, we're all here." The jailer called for lights, rushed in, and fell trembling before Silas. He then brought them out. "Sir, what must I do to be saved?" They replied, "Believe in the Lord Jesus, and you will be saved, you and your whole household." Then they spoke the word of the Lord to him and all the others in his house. At that hour of the night, the jailer took them and washed their wounds. Then immediately he and all his household were baptized. The jailer brought them into his house and set a meal before them. He was filled with joy because he had become to believe in God, he and his whole household. When it was daylight, the magistrates sent the officers to the jailer, and they ordered, "Release those men." Release those men, right? We're waiting to be released. Wow, that is so cool. The magistrates have ordered, and so forth. And then, Peter also escaped from prison in a similar manner. He found himself on a road walking. But isn't that what we're waiting for? So I just wanted to share that with you, some of the midnight specials that we can connect with this blood moon that's happening at midnight, the fact that Israel became a nation at midnight, right, at this same time. And go back and watch the other videos for more on that. But this is just a quick video. I want to give you a little scriptural encouragement there. And we're waiting for that bridegroom to come at midnight. He tarries. He's longer than we expected. But ultimately, he's going to return at midnight to take us to be with him. Amen, guys. 276, real quick. We can look that one up, you think? Let's see. Let me give it a try. See if I can look up 276 here. 276. All right, 276. Let's see what it is. Achuza. Possession. Wow, we will be in God's possession. Achuza, a friend of Abimelech. Possession. That's an interesting word. Let's take a look real quick in the Greek and just see what that says real quick, and then we will wrap this baby up. Let's see here. What is it? 276 was it? 276. Let's see what it says in the Greek. 276. What does it say? Immutable, unchangeable, unchanged. Wow. That's like God's plans. They're unchangeable, right? God has everything set. There's a time for everything, and you cannot change what he has planned. Amen, guys. Sounds pretty exciting to me. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you are too. Guys, thanks for Mia, Jay Flyaway, and Freya. Thanks for breaking the chat box. And be sure to hit if you didn't get a message on the video, be sure to hit the notifications for that. And obviously subscribe and like and all that good stuff. Thanks, guys. Love you. And I hope to see you in heaven real soon. Talk to you soon. God bless you.